In 1845, two mighty Royal Navy ships set sail from England, determined to finally conquer the Arctic and discover a way through. These weren't just any vessels, they were the most technologically advanced ships of their time. But once they entered the icy maze of the Arctic, they vanished without a trace. Before their disappearance, European whalers caught a glimpse of the two ships slipping into the frozen expanse. Then silence. 4 years later, a search party hears a chilling tale from an Inuit man. He claims he met the captain of one of the lost ships. The captain had pointed south, saying they needed to get back home, but they could barely walk. The ships, Terror under Captain Francis and HMS Erebus, led by Commander John, were peacefully cruising through the Arctic. Commander John was also the overall expedition leader. The crew rushed to his side, and by morning he was transferred back to the Erebus. Then tragedy struck. The ship was slammed by ice and a crew member fell to his death. Erebus was now operating at half power, a dangerous risk in the brutal Arctic winter. Captain Francis sounded the alarm. This wasn't ordinary ice, it was a monstrous frozen wall, and the cold was the harshest he'd ever seen. For 6 brutal days, the crew tries everything to break free, but the ice won't budge. With no hope in sight, John finally accepts the truth they're stuck and commands the crew to brace for a long, deadly winter. He proposed a bold move: transfer all of Erebus's fuel to the Terror and rely on one ship. To find a way out, John sends 3 search teams in different directions. Graham, the first lieutenant of HMS Erebus, spots something strange, a pile of stones in the distance. Harry later reports something chilling: giant footprints at the scene and no trace of Graham's body. Even worse, the elder's tongue had been cut out. John organizes a funeral for Graham and swears to hunt down the monster that killed him. Francis urges him to send a rescue mission south, estimating a grueling 3-month journey to the nearest British outpost. But John stubbornly refuses. But why? They rush toward it and discover it's a chaos stone structure Graham thinks was built by the Inuit. He stays with the fleet to keep control, while others are chosen to brave the deadly journey south. Ignoring orders, he and 2 others capture her. They drag her aboard and accuse her of working with the creature, claiming she's plotting their deaths. Hickey insists the creature is 3 times the size of a polar bear. But Francis Wumty allows such lawless behavior. He orders the men flogged for leaving their posts and taking matters into their own hands. Cautiously stepping outside, she finds something chilling: a seal carcass, freshly delivered by the mysterious creature. Harry takes it upon himself to build a connection. He offers her food, tries learning her language, and hopes to gain her trust, like it knows what it's doing. But the monster doesn't rest. New victims pile up. The results from the autopsies are shocking. These bodies seem like they were formed from 2 separate creatures. Massive surgical claw marks confirm this is no human, and definitely not a bear. This beast isn't just some bloodthirsty animal. It might be intelligent and even protective of the Inuit. But then they hear something moving on the ice. Thinking it's a polar bear, the men open fire at a shadowy figure in the dark. He meets with his officers Thomas and Edward and demands answers from the woman. She finally speaks. The creature is called Tonbach, which means evil spirit. She warns them that it no longer follows anyone it's out of control. Francis, desperate, demands to know how to kill it, but she offers no real solution. She looks just as terrified as the rest. When Francis threatens to throw her off the ship, she answers coldly, even if she helped. He wouldn't listen because deep down, he only wants to die with the creature. What he sees is horrifying claw marks that don't match any known predator. Suddenly, a scream pierces the air. Francis rushes to the deck and finds a soldier horribly wounded, his skull cap torn off in a brutal side attack. Another sailor frantically reports that someone has been snatched by the creature, his screams echoing through the ice. Francis leads a search party and finds the man's mangled body. But before they can retreat, the monster strikes again, killing a young crewman right before Francis's eyes. When they check, they realize the unthinkable: they've shot an Inuit elder. Then chaos. The beast strikes again, tearing one man to pieces in seconds. John panics and runs for his life, but the creature grabs him and drags him toward the ice hole where the elder's body was dumped. The crew finds only one thing: John's severed leg, lying in the snow, with a trail of massive footprints leading into the darkness. A woman rushes out, shouting in a language no one understands. Then, without warning, a monstrous white-furred beast attacks, ripping Graham apart before vanishing into the blizzard. But when they return to their lifeboats, horror strikes. Their supplies have been ransacked and destroyed beyond recognition. It's too vicious for even a polar bear. Each team drags heavy lifeboats across the frozen wasteland, desperate for a route to freedom. But Commander John refused. He wouldn't abandon either ship, confident they could still break through. One night, after some tricky navigation, John and his first officer James visited Captain Francis aboard the Terror for a relaxing dinner. The Inuit man warned them about a terrifying creature named Tonbach, a beast that devours anything with legs. The captain's message was grim. There is no passage through the Arctic. Turn back. Both ships are gone. As proof, the man showed them the captain's buttons. Rookie, a nervous young diver, was picked to inspect the problem beneath the bone-chilling water. Down there, he found more than he bargained for, the corpse of a drowned sailor staring back at him. Terrified, he signaled to be pulled up. Shaking, he told them the obstruction was gone, but said nothing about the body. So, what really happened to those ships? To find the truth, we must rewind to 4 years earlier. But the night took a dark turn. A young sailor suddenly coughed up blood. That same night, the young sailor's condition spiraled. He spoke of seeing a figure that no one else could see, and then, just like that, he died with no visible injuries. Assistant Dr. Harry reported it, but the lead doctor brushed it off as a final hallucination before death. Things were only getting worse. The next day, Erebus faced another crisis. The impact had damaged its propeller. Meanwhile, the doctors performed an autopsy on the sailor who died mysteriously and found no cause of death. Later, Commander John called a meeting with Captain Francis and his officers aboard the Terror. John makes a bold decision. The Terror will take the lead, smashing through the thick ice while Erebus trails behind. But things take a terrifying turn. The ships get trapped in a massive, unbreakable ice field. 8 months crawl by. Despite the freezing hell, the crew keeps the engines running, ready to fire them up the second the ice cracks. 3 days in, one team hits a dead end, a towering ice wall. That night, a violent storm crashes down around the trapped ships. Back at camp, Graham and his teammate return, claiming they found nothing useful. The wounded elder is taken aboard Erebus, but he doesn't make it. Francis, who learned the Inuit language on past voyages, speaks to the woman. Her message is chilling: leave now or vanish forever. But instead of fleeing, the Inuit woman sets up camp near the ships, watching, waiting, and refusing to leave. Days later, John checks on the armed men stationed to hunt the creature. With John dead, Francis steps up to lead. He approves the rescue mission, but he's not leaving. During John's funeral, the Inuit woman sits quietly in her igloo when a deep, eerie growl breaks the silence. Back aboard Erebus, Harry studies the photos of the latest victims. Meanwhile, Hickey, a cunning and suspicious sailor, spots the Inuit woman calmly communicating with the beast. The next morning, James brings the woman aboard Erebus, instructing the medical officer to treat her well. Alarming reports arrive next. The creature has been circling HMS Terror, almost as if it's watching them. And somehow, it seems to be planning its moves. Harry escorts the Inuit woman to Terror for further study. After a full month, Francis loses patience. Soon after, Thomas goes out to inspect the ice but is ambushed by Tonbach. It slashes his leg, but Thomas doesn't back down. He lures the beast higher, lights it up with fire so the crew can see, and they fire on it from below. The creature is hit and crashes to the ice. But when they get there, it's gone, just a trail of blood left behind as it vanishes with a haunting roar. Amid the chaos, the Inuit woman disappears without a trace. Thomas is carried back inside, and the crew is forced to amputate his leg to save him. Not long after, Francis calls a meeting. Pale and weak, he admits he's sick. He appoints Edward to take command of Terror and places James in charge of the entire expedition. Still, he succeeds in saving others. The fire kills both senior medical officers, leaving only Harry alive to care for the wounded. But before breaking the news, he throws a carnival to mark the return of the sun. They haul a boat filled with supplies and begin the harsh journey south. Hickey kills a commanding lieutenant and slaughters nearby Inuit people to hide their existence. But things take a dark turn. Hickey, now completely unhinged, forms his own splinter group. Once the flames die out, the surviving crew moves forward, dragging their supplies. But then, Disaster James collapses and has to be carried aboard the boat, joining the others already too sick to walk. He believes they won't survive if they share food with everyone. The elders receive her solemnly and reveal something haunting. The creature is now her burden. He is in agony and begs Francis to end his suffering. Torn and heavy-hearted, Francis finally gives him a vial of poison. James drinks it with a faint smile, finally free. In the morning, the group buries him in silence. It finds him. He does not run. Soon after, scouts return with chilling news. The creature is following them. As the new shaman, it is her responsibility to keep the balance. The crew forces smiles, pretending to enjoy it while silently starving. One night, they begin eating the corpses of fallen comrades. One of their scouts, secretly working for Hickey, leads them straight into a trap. Hickey's men ambush them, killing one and capturing the rest. But even more disturbing is what the sergeant reveals. He claims he saw the creature take a man's soul. Whatever that thing is, it's not just hunting them for food. As he begins his speech, the Inuit woman arrives at the camp, now mute and bleeding, seeking medical help. Harry immediately tends to her. He volunteers to act as a decoy to lead the creature away from the others. Francis tries to stop him, but Thomas is firm. "Let me be useful one last time," he says. Thomas sets off alone. Days later, he reaches the shoreline and notices something incredible. The snow is melting. He documents everything, hoping the knowledge will help others survive. When Harry examines him, he quietly tells Hickey that the man won't make it through the night. But instead of compassion, Hickey responds with cruelty. He kills the man on the spot, coldly, ruthlessly, making it clear there is no room for weakness in his world. But before the hanging begins, Tonbach strikes again, tearing through the crew like paper. Hickey escapes in the chaos and kidnaps Harry, the last surviving doctor. But as Francis continues addressing the crew, a horrifying scene unfolds. Stephen, completely deranged, pours alcohol everywhere and locks the exits. The others have voted to move south and leave the sick to die. A sergeant watches in horror as Tonbach steals the soul of a fallen soldier, turning it into a raging spiritual monster. Then he sets himself on fire. Weeks pass, no new attacks. For the first time in months, things seem quiet. It's slowly driving everyone mad. He tells the chief doctor, Stephen. Exhausted and cold, they gather to discuss their dwindling food supply. Tension rises when Edward suggests they leave the sick behind and return for them later if they survive, but Francis refuses. He looks each man in the eye and says firmly, "We live or die together, no one gets left behind." But Stephen, clearly affected by the poison himself, shrugs it off and says he'll think about it. Meanwhile, in the cold wilderness, the escaped Inuit woman is barely surviving. She builds an altar from a seal carcass and begins a solemn ritual. When she senses Tonbach nearby, she begs it to accept her in place of her dead father. She says the creature can't exist long without a shaman. And then, in a final act, she slices out her own tongue, becoming tongueless like her father. Back with the crew, James prepares for a desperate move, abandoning both ships to head south on foot. Supplies are running out fast. Meanwhile, Harry makes a terrible discovery. The canned food they've been eating is poisoned with lead. At the carnival, Francis learns of James's plan and decides to speak to the crew himself. The flames spread fast, people scream and push to escape. Some manage to cut through the tent, but in the panic, a man accidentally stabs the medical assistant. After the nightmare, Francis leads the survivors on foot, leaving behind a few men in case the ice breaks and the ships become free. It gets worse. Francis learns of the mutiny and handles it carefully. He captures Hickey without risking more lives. Hickey is sentenced to death. Soldiers fire a cannon at Tonbach, but it's not enough to stop the beast. With the carnage behind them, Francis orders the dead burned. They're too weak to bury anyone. Meanwhile, in Hickey's splinter group, one of the men falls seriously ill. Elsewhere, Francis and his team set up a temporary camp. Far from them, the Inuit girl finally reaches her settlement. Back at Francis's camp, James's condition has worsened. Thomas, knowing he's no longer a help with just one leg, steps forward. Back with Hickey's crew, the situation turns even darker. Food is gone, desperation sets in. Not long after, disaster strikes Francis's group. Meanwhile, Thomas, his body covered in forks to make noise, waits for the creature. At the original camp, Edward tries to rally the crew to rescue Francis. But it's too late. Back in Hickey's camp, Harry tends to Francis's wounds. In hushed tones, he reveals that one of Hickey's men was killed and eaten. Together, they quietly assess Hickey's numbers and weapons. He calls it Tonbach. Francis listens, disgusted but silent. Harry then gives Francis a grim warning: if they ever forced to eat human flesh to survive, only consume the tough skin from the foot. He reveals his final truth: he was never Hickey. He killed the real Hickey to steal his identity and join the expedition, hoping to start a new life. But now that dream has collapsed, leaving him a madman stranded in the frozen wasteland, nothing else. Later, Hickey boasts to Francis about his new plan to capture the creature. That night, Harry poisons himself. By morning, Hickey's crew unknowingly eats his flesh. Francis is forced to join them, threatened with death if he refuses. An Inuit man eventually reaches the elders with a message. Two strangers have arrived. He no longer belongs to the world he left behind. He is part of something new, now part of the land, the people, the spirit of survival. In time, he starts a family of his own. One is Francis. As he had requested, the elders share his story with the naval officer. Remembering Harry's words, he tears off a piece of footskin and forces it down. Soon after, Hickey forces the surviving men to haul a lifeboat across the ice, chaining Francis and the others like animals. It comes and slaughters the crew one by one. Hickey, now half insane, attempts to bond with the beast like the Inuit girl once did. He cuts out his own tongue and offers it. The creature pauses, then rips him apart. Together they walk away, passing the ruins of Hickey's camp and the remains of Dr. Harry. Time passes. 4 years later, Hickey tries one last, desperate act. He lures the creature to his camp. It turns to Francis. But the creature is weak, dying. It has eaten too many poisoned men. Staggering, bleeding, the monster collapses and dies. In the aftermath, the Inuit girl Sona finds Francis barely alive. She frees him by cutting off his shackled hand. They share a final moment together before Edward II passes. The expedition is over. Only Francis remains. Days later, Francis regains his strength and begins searching for survivors. He finds Edward's group dead. Only Edward is barely alive. He joins Silna's tribe and learns her name at last. As the new shaman, Silna must now leave the tribe behind to carry the creature's spirit. Francis tries to follow, but the elders stop him. Some paths, they tell him, are not meant to be shared. Back in England, 4 years after the ships disappeared, a naval officer readies a rescue mission. Outside the lodge, Francis sits quietly, listening to his tale being told. And so, the last man of the expedition becomes a legend not of conquest, but of endurance, healing, and transformation. The end.